Hello and welcome to this Tuesday edition of the World Report, viewers. I'm Arjun Samar Mahindran. Let's take a look at what's making headlines around the world. An Indian woman is dead in the United States and her family says this was not a crime of passion. 27-year-old Nikita Godishala was found stabbed to death in a Maryland apartment on New Year's Eve. Her father now says the accused was not her boyfriend but her former roommate. That's correct. He alleges the motive was money. The family says and maintains that the man borrowed thousands of dollars from Nikita and was planning to flee to India. Now, this is when Nikita demanded her money back. He allegedly killed her and disappeared. US cops, meanwhile, have issued an arrest warrant for first and second degree murder. Indian authorities are now being urged to help trace the suspect and bring Nikita's body home. Meanwhile, Nikita's family waits for justice and, of course, for answers. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro appeared in a New York court brought in by a helicopter or a chopper, as it's called, to face serious US charges, including drug trafficking and narco-terrorism as well. Flanked by heavy security, Maduro pleaded not guilty, telling the judge, "I'm innocent, a decent man, and the president of Venezuela." Not only this, viewers, he claimed that he was kidnapped from his home in Caracas, calling himself a prisoner of war. His wife has also pleaded not guilty to the charges. Now, as Maduro fights the case in court, political ripples are being felt back home in Venezuela. In capital Caracas, his son addressed the National Assembly, vowing to continue their duties and calling Maduro's detention illegal, as Venezuela, in fact, braces for further fallout. Meanwhile, my colleague Natasha Esrani gets us the latest.
Now, outside the courthouse for hours now, protesters as well as supporters of Maduro have been gathering alongside police and a lot of press, often getting into skirmishes. One side arguing, Venezuelan immigrants here in New York arguing that Donald Trump had done the right thing by bringing the Venezuelan president to New York on narco-terrorism charges, saying that he had destroyed their country. On the other hand, we also spoke to those who said that President Donald Trump has set a very dangerous precedent by nabbing another leader and then bringing him to US soil. So we're going to see a protracted legal fight now start here in the US federal courthouse come March 17th, which is when Maduro is going to make his next court appearance, and he is going to argue that he has sovereign immunity. We'll see how that plays out. Meanwhile, here in New York, with camera person Siddharth Kejriwal, this is Natasha Esrani for NDTV. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, he's just got arraigned in the federal courthouse, and the charges against him are of narco-terrorism and importing cocaine into the United States. What do you think, and why are you here today, and whose side are you on?
Well, we are here in opposition to U.S. imperialism's attack on Venezuela and their illegal kidnapping of President Nicolas Maduro and the First Lady, Celia Flores. We fully stand with President Nicolas Maduro and his wife, and we are calling for their immediate release.
That's a bad person. Like, none of these people out here would be okay with if someone came and took Trump and charged him with some outrageous charge. Nobody would be okay with that because the foreign government came and did it. I mean, we don't have sovereignty to our country, but somehow it's okay because Donald Trump did it.
We're waiting for this time for the last 25 years. The system is controlled by the government, by the dictator. So to get the power again, we need like someone stronger to take the control. And there's nobody there in Venezuela because all the opposition are controlled by the government.
Now we take you straight to the UN, viewers, where Secretary General Antonio Guterres has warned that the US capture of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro could very well trigger greater instability in Venezuela and also the wider Latin American region. The warning by the UN chief is given during an emergency session of the United Nations Security Council, or the UNSC, just blocks away from where Mr. Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores, were facing a Manhattan judge. Meanwhile, listen in to the UN Under-Secretary and US Envoy Mike Pence.
Situations as confused, as complex as the one we now face, it is important to stick to principles. Respect for the UN Charter and all other applicable legal frameworks to safeguard peace and security. Respect for the principles of sovereignty, political independence, and territorial integrity of states. The prohibition of the threat or use of force. The power of the law must prevail. International law contains tools to address issues such as illicit traffic in narcotics, disputes about resources, and human rights concerns.
The United States successfully carried out a surgical law enforcement operation facilitated by the U.S. military against two indicted fugitives of American justice, narco-terrorist Nicolas Maduro and Celia Flores. There is no war against Venezuela or its people. We are not occupying a country. I want to reiterate, President Trump gave diplomacy a chance. He offered Maduro multiple off-ramps. He tried to de-escalate. Maduro refused to take them. President Trump made it clear that the narco-terrorism must stop, and yet it continued.
Now we take you to a special report, viewers, which in fact looks at the Delta Force. Officially, the first Special Forces Operational Detachment of the US, a highly secretive US Army elite force founded back in 1977 by Colonel Charles Beckwith. Notable missions include the 1993 Battle of Mogadishu, the 2019 raid killing ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, and most recently, of course, the capture of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. Take a look.
In the shadows of America's defense stands one of the most elite units in the world, Delta Force. Officially known as the 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta, this secretive US Army unit was founded in 1977 by Colonel Charles Beckwith, inspired by the British SAS to combat the rising threat of global terror. Delta operators are the best of the best, hand-selected from Rangers, Green Berets and beyond. They undergo grueling training in counter-terrorism, hostage rescue, direct action raids, and high-value target captures. From the intense Battle of Mogadishu in 1993, immortalized in Black Hawk Down, where Delta snipers earned medals of honor defending downed pilots, to the raid that eliminated the ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi in 2019. And most recently, the capture of the Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro in Caracas during Operation Absolute Resolve, along with countless classified missions in Iraq, Afghanistan, and beyond. Delta Force operates under the Joint Special Operations Command, striking swiftly and silently when ordered to deploy. They are the tip of the spear, unseen, often unstoppable, and some say without equal, America's ultimate shadow warriors. Vishnu Shom for NDTV.
Now we take you to another brewing conflict where Greenland's Prime Minister Jens Nielsen is pushing back after US President Donald Trump renewed talk about a possible takeover of the largest island nation on the globe. Now Nielsen has made it clear Greenland is not Venezuela. It's a democratic country that has in fact been self-governing for decades now. Nielsen says the idea that the United States could simply take over Greenland is unrealistic and inappropriate. Not only this, he also rejected any talk of military action. Meanwhile, Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen has also underlined that it makes absolutely no sense to talk about the US needling in to take over Greenland. She added that the US has no right to annex any of the three countries in the Danish kingdom. Listen in to both the Prime Ministers of Greenland and Denmark.
Sekkutuunik maanga pisoqarnissaanu maannakku oqalunneq naliliinerpu tasaniingilluinnarmat soorunami upalungaarsimanissami iliuseqarnissa taakkulu piaredsima fiinissa tassuun killi toqassangaluarpat taakkuaqulaajaarneri allallu naarikkersuusuningaanni ingerlappagun aamma ataavartumi ingerlattuartuuvagun soorunami pissutti ukua taavalu pissun kingullertigullu oqariartuutigineqartun naarikkersuusuningaanni isingu tamakkununga tungasuni ammarnerutila tilaarpaat taanna oqaatingissuara kisianni oqaqqissuunga uaniingitangut unnuaminunarputiguagaanissaanik pisoqassasoq naarikkersuisun oqaloqatiginniaqqutigalungu pittaasumillu suleqatigiinner suleqatigu tamaaviisa peqatigalungit pissutsin naliginnaasungoqqinnissaanut aqutieqqortu atorlungit ataqqaqatiginnerlu angoqqinnissaanut suliqassuun.
For det første så mener jeg, at man skal tage den amerikanske præsident alvorligt, når han siger, at han ønsker Grønland. Men jeg vil også gøre klart, at hvis USA vælger at angribe et andet NATO-land militært, så hører alting op, altså inklusiv vores NATO og dermed den sikkerhed, som er blevet tilvejebragt siden afslutningen på 2. verdenskrig.
Viewers, now over to another special report that highlights Donald Trump's latest remarks and other latest threats against countries all the way from Latin America, Greenland to even Iran in the Middle East. Take a look.
The world's focus is on Latin America at the moment, with Donald Trump issuing a warning to new Venezuelan leader Delcy Rodriguez that she could pay a very big price, probably bigger than Maduro, if she doesn't do what's right. While most people seemingly have their eyes set on the unprecedented situation unfolding in Caracas, Trump has his own set of priorities, threatening one nation after another. Colombia, which is Venezuela's neighbor, was one of the first nations to receive a stern warning from Trump. He hasn't ruled out intervention in Colombia, describing its left-wing president Gustavo Petro as a drug trafficker and a sick man. Petro, on the other hand, has denied the accusations, warning Trump not to slander him. Trump doubled down on his controversial remarks about Greenland, insisting the US needs the Arctic territory for national security, citing alleged Chinese and Russian submarine activity in the region. Greenland's Prime Minister Jens Nielsen responded by saying that's enough now and described the notion of US control over the island as a fantasy. The already fragile relationship between Cuba and the US is also facing fresh strain after Donald Trump described the island nation as a failing country.
Cuba is ready to fall. You know? Yes. Cuba looks like it's ready to fall. I don't know if they can hold out.
Trump also renewed pressure on Mexico, saying he would prefer Mexican authorities deal with powerful drug cartels themselves, but warned if they do not, Washington may be forced to step in. Trump has also issued a stark warning to Iran. He said if Iranian authorities begin killing demonstrators, as they have in the past, the US would respond with what he described as very hard action. Vishal Vivek for NDTV World.
Viewers, we now shift our focus to Southeast Asia, where there's no end to Hindu atrocities in Bangladesh, as the country we all know has been undergoing severe violence and anti-India protests. In the latest, a 45-year-old Hindu trader has been shot dead right outside his factory in the Jashore area. A Hindu woman has been gang raped, tied to a tree, hair trimmed and tortured in Khulna district. But that's not it. A 45-year-old Hindu man identified as Rana Bairagi, an ice cream factory owner, was shot dead right outside his factory and his throat was slit. Bangladesh cops say he was targeted at close range and died on the spot. According to the local resident, the attackers arrived on a motorcycle, called Rana out of the ice factory and fired several rounds at Rana's head and fled. Meanwhile, another 40-year-old Hindu widow was gang raped by two men. NDTV spoke to local residents and found out that the woman had been harassed by the two accused for the past 2 years now, since the death of her husband. On 3rd of January, both the accused barged into her house and raped her, chopped her hair, tied her to a tree and tortured her. She was finally rescued by local residents and taken to the hospital. Both the accused have since been arrested by police. Over in the Middle East, a wave of protests driven by Iran's worsening economic crisis has entered its 10th day as we get you this broadcast. This also comes as Donald Trump has renewed warnings of possible US intervention. Now, fresh videos circulating online, as you see there on your television sets right now, show demonstrations in Tehran and across several provinces, including the likes of Fars, Ilam, North Khorasan and Semnan. Human rights groups say protests have now spread to 26 out of Iran's 31 provinces since last week. At least 19 protesters and one member of the security forces have reportedly also been killed. Speaking to reporters aboard Air Force One, Donald Trump warned that Iranian authorities would be hit very hard if the death toll rises further. Not only this, viewers, he also said, and I'm quoting here, "We are watching it very closely. If they start killing people like they have in the past, I think they're going to get hit very hard by the US." Now, the protests began peacefully on the 28th of December, 3 days before New Year Eve, sparked by public outrage over runaway inflation and the steep collapse of local currency against the US dollar, which in fact has lost nearly 80% of its value compared to just a year ago. Now, it does not come as a surprise, viewers, that Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has adopted a hardline stance, warning that rioters should be put in their place. Meanwhile, India and New Delhi has advised its nationals to avoid non-essential travel to the country until further notice, owing to the recent developments across the nation. The advisory issued by the MEA, or the Ministry of External Affairs, read, and I quote here, "Indian citizens and PIOs currently in Iran should exercise due caution, avoid areas of protests or demonstrations, and closely monitor news as well as the website and social media handles of the Embassy of India in Tehran." Over in Bolivia, the main labor union has announced on Monday that it was breaking off talks with the new government of the center-right president, Rodrigo Paz. The decision comes after he refused to back down on fuel subsidy cuts and stepped up its protests in the streets. Now, shortly before meeting with the Bolivian Workers' Union, Paz said that he did not intend to back down on fuel subsidy cuts, the ones he had announced initially. He had decreed these cuts after taking office to address Bolivia's serious economic condition. We get you more.
Porque hay 100 artículos escondidos donde venden nuestros recursos naturales, donde abren el mercado sin proteger el mercado interno. ¿Vamos a morir de hambre a costa de los privados? ¿Todavía volverían los dólares al país? ¿Retornan los dólares al país?
We shift our gaze to East Asia, where a strong earthquake hit western Japan earlier today. That's Tuesday, but there was no danger of a tsunami. The Japan Met Agency has said that the quake had a preliminary magnitude of 6.2. The quake, furthermore, occurred in the Shimane prefecture in northwestern part of the country. No injuries or damage to property were reported from the quake. For your benefit, viewers, Japan is one of the so-called Pacific Ring of Fire. Now, what is this Pacific Ring of Fire? It's one of the world's most earthquake-prone areas.
政府としては地震発生後直ちに官邸危機管理センターに官邸連絡室を設置し被害状況の把握に当たっております。で現時点で人的物的被害は確認中との報告を受けておりますけれども、引き続き対応に万全を期してまいります。
US Chick-fil-A is celebrating its 80th anniversary with the biggest ever marketing campaign. That's right, the chicken chain is going all out with retro packaging, collectible cups, themed merch, and even, that's right, the chance to win free food for an entire year. However, the chain's anniversary comes as the restaurant battles with shrinking demand. The company's sales growth slowed to 5.4% just last year, or last year in 2024 now, making it the first year in more than a decade with less than double-digit sales growth. And there was something different on the menu for the elephants and some of their fellow residents at the Berlin Zoo: Christmas trees. The treats were unveiled at the zoo on Monday in what has become an annual event now. As you see on your screens, pandas played with the pine branches while snacking from the fruits hanging from them. And not to forget the elephants, who in fact tore off the branches with their trunks, eating the greenery or lobbing it around in their enclosure, as you see right there. We get you some reactions.
Heute findet im Zoo Berlin die traditionelle Weihnachtsbaumverfütterung statt. Weihnachtsbäume, die nicht im normalen Verkauf verkauft werden konnten, die kommen teilweise zu uns in dem Zoo und finden hier eine zweite Verwendung als Beschäftigung und Tierfutter für unsere Zootiere. Manche von den Tieren fressen die Bäume tatsächlich auch. Also die Elefanten freuen sich über eine Abwechslung im Futterplan und fressen auch sogar die Nadeln mit. Und dann sind die ganzen Bäume nach wenigen Stunden komplett verschwunden.
And with that, we'll step into a short break. Be right back with you. Welcome back, viewers. On to updates from the world of business and technology, where NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang showed off his company's latest AI offerings at the CES in Las Vegas. Taken to the stage, Huang described how NVIDIA's Alpha Mayo technology is used to teach the brains of a new Mercedes-Benz to operate anonymously. That's right, he said the cars will be shipping worldwide starting this year itself. Huang was joined on stage by a pair of robots interacting with his questions, including a request to jump. We get you more.
Today we're announcing Alpha Mayo, the world's first thinking, reasoning autonomous vehicle AI. Alpha Mayo is trained end to end, literally from camera in to actuation out. The camera in, lots and lots of miles that are driven by itself, where we human drive it, driven using human demonstration. And we have lots and lots of miles that are generated by Cosmos.
A US judge on Monday rejected Amazon's bid to dismiss a proposed lawsuit accusing the online retailer of price gouging during the pandemic. The judge found unpersuasive claim that Washington state consumer protection laws were vague as applied to pricing. Consumers have accused Amazon of failing to prevent sellers from using its platform to charge flagrantly unlawful prices for staples. Now, price hikes include increase of 233%, an unreal price rise of 233% at that on pain relief tablets, and 1,800%, that's correct, 1,800% on some face masks. Britain's Royal Mail is celebrating the finale of the global sci-fi smash Stranger Things with a new set of 14 stamps. That's correct. Now, these stamps were designed by British artist Kyle Lambert, who also, by the way, created posters for the show. Each of the 10 main stamps also bears a sign, a hidden Stranger Things logo, only visible under UV light. A further 4 stamps make up a miniature sheet featuring the 4 friends at the very heart of the tale riding their bikes. Well, from strange geopolitical actions to Stranger Things stamps, these are all the world updates we have for you this Tuesday. Take care and have a wonderful day.